The grand chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with the usual cacophony of alien dialects and the screeches of digital translators. Today's session was packed. Diplomats and emissaries from myriad worlds jostled for prominence. At the heart of this interstellar assembly stood Jace Morgan, a human envoy who had made modest waves in the cosmos through deft negotiations and unyielding courage. As the presiding officer, a venerable Elythian with glowing tendrils, called the session to order, a hush fell over the crowd. "We now address the matter of King Zorlex's passing," the officer announced, his voice echoing off the ornate walls. Murmurs swept through the assembly as the topic shifted to the distribution of the late king's vast holdings. Jace listened with half an ear, his thoughts wandering, until a Draxian legal executor took the podium. "According to the final will of our sovereign, King Zorlex, all titles, estates, and associated responsibilities shall pass to one Jace Morgan of Earth," the executor read in a clipped, formal tone. The chamber erupted in surprise and mockery. A round of laughter circled the room as countless eyes turned to Jace. He felt the weight of every stare, his face flushing with a mix of embarrassment and anger. "Why would Zorlex do this to me?" Jace muttered under his breath, genuinely perplexed. A voice beside him, slithery and amused, chimed in. "Perhaps it's your charm, human," said a slimy Grothian traitor, his tentacles wiggling in amusement. Before Jace could respond, the executor continued. "Furthermore, the heir is charged with the guardianship of Princess Delira to ensure her well-being and education in the ways of the galaxy." This statement provoked another wave of laughter, even harsher than the first. Princess Delira was not present, but her reputation preceded her. Brilliant yet belligerent, with a visage known to unsettle even the most stoic. Jace's discomfort grew as he stood, feeling like a specimen under a microscope. He strode to the podium, his steps resolute. "Members of the council, I am as surprised as you are by this honor. However, I intend to fulfill these duties with the dignity they require." His voice, steady and clear, carried across the murmurs. From the crowd, a sharp voice cut through. "And what does a human know of Draxian dignities, sneered a reptilian delegate from a rival system. Jace met the delegate's gaze, his own eyes steely. "More than you might think. I had the privilege of King Zorlex's mentorship. I intend to honor his legacy and teachings, not just for Draxia but for the unity of our galaxy." The murmurs softened somewhat, replaced by a begrudging curiosity. Sensing the shift, Jace pressed on. "I ask for your guidance and patience as I navigate these responsibilities. Let us work together for stability and prosperity." As he returned to his seat, the assembly seemed to weigh his words, the earlier mockery tempered by a reluctant respect. But Jace knew the hardest part was yet to come. Meeting Princess Delira and finding a way to coexist for the sake of a legacy neither of them had chosen. Jace's first meeting with Princess Delira was scheduled under the least auspicious circumstances. In the vast, cold corridors of the Draxian royal palace, Jace awaited her arrival, feeling more like a prisoner awaiting judgment than a guardian about to meet his charge. The doors at the end of the hall finally hissed open, revealing the princess. Delira was taller than Jace, her scales shimmering with a metallic hue that caught the light with every movement. Her eyes, a piercing shade of amber, sized him up with a discernible mix of curiosity and disdain. "So, you are the human." Delira's voice echoed slightly in the large hall, each word laced with skepticism. "I expected someone older, perhaps wiser." Jace offered a polite smile, extending his hand in a gesture of peace. "And you are Princess Delira. I assure you, I'm wiser than I look. It's an honor to meet you." Delira eyed his hand as if it were an alien species itself before finally accepting it. Her grip was firm, almost challenging. "Honor?" A curious word, considering the circumstances. "Tell me, Jace Morgan, how does a human come to inherit not just a king's estate but his daughter as well?" Jace withdrew his hand, choosing his words carefully. "Your father and I worked closely in the past. He taught me much about your people's culture and values. I believe he saw in me someone who could bridge our worlds. Or perhaps he wanted to test my patience. Delira retorted sharply, her tail flicking in irritation. My father had a peculiar sense of humor. Jace chuckled softly, easing the tension. That he did. But I am here to help Princess. I wish to honor his memory by supporting you, not supplanting your place here. Delira's gaze softened slightly, a hint of curiosity breaking through her guarded demeanor. Help? Few have dared to offer that genuinely. Most seek to manipulate or demand. What do you seek, Jace? Understanding, cooperation, and perhaps guidance. Your father's shoes are large to fill, and I have no illusions about the challenge ahead. The princess walked past him, her step slow, contemplating. Very well, human. I will reserve my judgment for now. You shall have an opportunity to prove your worth. But be warned, my trust is not easily earned. Jace nodded, his expression serious. Nor is mine, princess. I prefer honest efforts over easy promises. As they walked through the echoing halls toward the main council room, Jace could feel the eyes of the palace staff on them. Curious, suspicious, and bewildered. He knew winning over Delira was just the first step in a much longer journey. The real test would be facing the Draxian court and its array of scheming nobles and cynical advisors. Tell me, Jace, Delira suddenly said, breaking the silence. What do you know of Draxian politics? Enough to know I should tread carefully, he replied with a wry smile. Then let us tread together, she said, a slight warmth entering her voice for the first time. Perhaps, together, we might navigate this labyrinth more effectively. Jace met her gaze, sensing the beginning of an alliance forged not by decree, but by necessity and mutual respect. Lead the way, princess. In the weeks following their uneasy alliance, Jace and Princess Delira found themselves deep in the undercurrents of Draxian politics. Each council meeting was a ballet of veiled threats and overt power plays, with Jace slowly learning to read the room under Delira's subtle guidance. One afternoon, as they reviewed security dispatches in the war room, a priority message beeped through the comm system. Delira tapped the display, bringing up the urgent report. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy image of a ravaged outpost on the outer edge of the Draxian system. Another attack, Delira muttered, her brow furrowing. This is the third one this month. Jace leaned in, analyzing the damage. These aren't random pirates or scavengers. Look at the precision of these strikes. Whoever they are, they're organized and well-informed. Delira nodded, her tail twitching with agitation. The council refuses to see the pattern. They believe these to be isolated incidents, unwilling to admit that something far more coordinated is at play. Jace scrolled through the additional reports, each detailing similar tactics and aftermaths. We need to convince them otherwise. There's a strategic mind behind these attacks, one aiming to weaken your borders. A plan began to form in his mind. What if we set a trap? If we can capture one of these attackers, we might be able to get some answers directly. Delira considered this, her gaze distant. It's risky, but given the council's current stance, direct evidence might be the only way to shift their perspective. Then let's prepare for the next council meeting. We'll lay out the evidence, propose the trap, and request the resources. It's better to act now while we can still control the game. The following day, the Royal Council chamber buzzed with the usual political intrigue as members gathered for the session. Delira and Jace entered together, their presence commanding immediate attention. As the debates raged on trivial affairs, Delira stood, signaling for silence. Esteemed members, we face a threat that endangers not just our outpost but the very integrity of our system. These attacks are not random. They are a clear and present danger to Draxia. Murmurs filled the room, some skeptical, others curious. Jace then stepped forward, laying out the evidence they had compiled. Here are the patterns of the attacks. Note the strategic targets, the timing, and precision. We propose setting a defensive trap at the next likely target to capture these aggressors. A senior counselor, an aged Draxian with a scarred crest, leaned forward. You suggest we bait our own people? Risk more lives for this theory? Jace met his gaze firmly. We risk more by doing nothing. Each attack grows bolder. If we do not act, we invite these invaders deeper into our territory. Delira added, with all due respect, we cannot afford indecision. Our enemies are counting on it. We must be proactive to protect our citizens and sovereignty. The room fell into a tense silence, the weight of their argument hanging in the air. After a long pause, another counselor, younger and more progressive, spoke up. I support the princess and her human advisor. It's time we take decisive action. Nods began to ripple through the chamber, and slowly, consensus built. The council approved the operation, albeit with some reservations. Jace and Delira exchanged a brief look of relief and determination. They had won a crucial battle, but the war, the one for the future of Draxia, was just beginning. With the council's begrudging approval, Jace and Princess Delira set about organizing the trap for their mysterious aggressors. They chose a strategic location near the edge of Draxian space, where the previous attacks had clustered. Preparations were meticulous, combining Draxian military might with Jace's tactical insights from human warfare, a blend that was unprecedented but potent. As the chosen day drew near, Jace surveyed the setup from the command center aboard the Draxian flagship, Vigilant Claw. Delira stood beside him, her presence commanding and resolute, as officers and advisors buzzed around them, finalizing details. Everything is in place, Jace confirmed, checking the last of the reports. Our bait has been set. Now we wait. Delira nodded, her eyes scanning the live feeds from various outposts. Our enemies have proven themselves cunning. I have no doubt they will take the bait. The real question is, can we withstand and capture them? Jace met her gaze, his expression firm. We've planned for every contingency. Our forces are ready, more than they've ever been. The tension was palpable as hours ticked by with no sign of the enemy. Doubts began to whisper through the command center, but just as restlessness peaked, an alert sounded. Contact. Enemy vessels approaching the bait zone. Instantly, the room snapped to focus chaos. Commands were issued and battle stations manned as screens lit up with the approach of sleek, aggressive-looking ships, their designs unfamiliar and menacing. Jace's hand hovered over the tactical display, issuing orders. All units, hold until they fully engage. We need them committed before we spring the trap. Delira relayed commands in Draxian, her voice authoritative and calm, even as the first volleys of enemy fire lit up the space around their hidden fleet. The enemy, confident and bold, took the bait and moved in aggressively. Just as they began their assault, Jace gave the signal. Now, execute countermeasures. Space erupted in a ballet of firepower and defensive maneuvers. Draxian ships, concealed by the latest cloaking technology, revealed themselves, encircling the enemy in a well-coordinated trap. The battle was fierce, with both sides exchanging heavy fire. Jace's strategies were tested to their limits as the enemy demonstrated a robust and adaptive fighting style. However, the Draxian forces, buoyed by the element of surprise and superior numbers, began to turn the tide. Amidst the chaos, one of the enemy's ships, damaged and isolated from its fleet, became the prime target for capture. Delira, seeing the opportunity, took a squad of elite guards and boarded the vessel. Inside, they encountered fierce resistance. Blaster fire and energy weapons clashed in the narrow corridors of the alien ship. Delira fought alongside her soldiers, her combat skills honed from years of rigorous training. Finally, they secured the bridge, capturing a handful of enemy combatants, including what appeared to be their commander. Jace, monitoring the situation from the flagship, let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. As the captured enemies were secured and the remaining hostile ships retreated, battered and diminished, a cheer broke out among the Draxian crew. They had won, but this victory was just the beginning. Jace turned to Delira, who had just returned to the command center, her armor scorched but her spirit unbroken. Well done, princess. Now, Let's find out who these attackers are and what they want. Delira nodded, her eyes alight with the fire of victory and curiosity. Yes, let's see who dared to challenge the Draxian Empire. Together, they approached the holding area, ready to interrogate their new prisoners. The battle was over, but the war for answers and for the future of Draxia was just starting. The victory in space brought a temporary surge of confidence among the Draxian military ranks. But the war was far from over. The interrogations of the captured enemy combatants revealed troubling news. They were scouts from the Krylocks, a warrior race known for their brutal conquests and expansionist policies. Their main fleet was already en route to Draxos, the Draxian capital. Jace and Princess Delira, now in the war room of the royal palace, pored over star maps and enemy schematics. They're moving faster than we anticipated, Jace noted, tracing their projected path with a finger. Our window to fortify Draxos is narrowing. Delira, her expression grim, nodded in agreement. The Council is still reeling from the reality of this threat. We must rally our forces quickly and prepare the city defenses. Draxos will not fall under my watch. As the Krylocks fleet approached, the skies over Draxos darkened with the shadow of enemy ships. The city's ancient defense systems, a network of massive energy cannons and shield generators, powered to life, casting a protective dome over the sprawling metropolis. Jace, dressed in a suit of customized human Draxian armor, stood beside Delira atop the central command tower. Below, legions of Draxian soldiers took position, their weapons ready. "Your people are brave," he commented, watching the troops prepare with practiced precision. "They are, and they'll fight to their last breath," Delira replied, her voice tinged with pride and worry. "But bravery alone won't save us today. We need your strategies, Jace." The first wave of the Krylocks attack was fierce. Plasma bolts rained from the sky, challenging the integrity of the city's shields. Jace coordinated the defense efforts, directing energy outputs and counterstrikes. Delira, meanwhile, communicated with her commanders, keeping the troops synchronized and motivated. As the battle intensified, a critical alert sounded. One of the shield generators on the eastern sector had been damaged, its energy flickering. "They're targeting our weak spots," Jace observed, analyzing the attack patterns. "We need to reinforce that sector." Without hesitation, Delira grabbed her weapon. "I'll lead the reinforcements. Keep the defenses coordinated, Jace." Rushing to the eastern sector, Delira and her unit encountered fierce resistance. The Krylocks had landed ground forces, attempting to breach the city. The battle was brutal. Close-quarters combat ensuing in the shadow of the flickering shield. Back at the command tower, Jace's hands moved swiftly over the controls, rerouting power to bolster the failing sector. Through the comm link, he could hear the clash of arms and Delira's commands, each order a lifeline to her soldiers. After intense fighting, Delira and her forces pushed the Krylocks back, securing the generator long enough for engineers to restore its function. The shield stabilized, casting a renewed glow over the city. Exhausted but undeterred, Delira returned to the command center, her armor scorched and dented. "The sector is secure for now," she reported, her breath heavy. Jace offered her a nod of respect. "Well fought, Princess. Let's keep the pressure on them. If we can hold out until their supply lines stretch too thin, they'll have to retreat." As night fell over Draxos, the battle raged on, each side unwilling to yield. Jace and Delira stood together, united in their determination to protect the city and its people. The siege of Draxos was proving to be the greatest test of their leadership and their unexpected partnership. The siege of Draxos stretched into what felt like an interminable ordeal, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. As dawn broke over the scarred cityscape, a brief respite allowed Jace and Princess Delira to reassess their strategy. "We can't keep this up indefinitely," Jace admitted, examining the latest damage reports. The defenses held, but each Krylocks assault drained their resources further. "We need a decisive victory, something that shifts the balance in our favor." Delira, still in her battle-worn armor, paced the room, deep in thought. "What if we take the fight to them?" she proposed, stopping to face Jace. A direct strike against their flagship could demoralize them, maybe even cut the head off the snake. Jace considered her suggestion, then nodded slowly. "It's risky, but it might just work. We'll need a small, elite team. Hit fast, hit hard, and get out before they know what hit them." The plan was daring. A covert operation involving Jace and Delira leading a strike team aboard a stealth shuttle, aiming to infiltrate the Krylok's flagship. The risk was significant, but the potential rewards compelled them to action, under the cover of darkness. Their shuttle detached from the Draxian fleet and slipped through the chaos of space, narrowly dodging debris and stray fire. Inside, Jace and Delira geared up, checking their weapons and tactical gear. As they neared the Krylok's flagship, Delira turned to Jace. "Whatever happens out there, I want you to know I've never met anyone like you. Your courage, your spirit, it's inspiring." Jace met her gaze, feeling a surge of respect and camaraderie. "Same here, Delira. Let's make sure we both come back to tell this story." Their shuttle docked quietly in the enemy ship's hangar. The team disembarked swiftly, moving with precision through the dimly lit corridors. They encountered resistance, but Delira and Jace worked seamlessly together, covering each other as they advanced toward the ship's core. Reaching the central command room, they confronted the Krylok's commander, a towering figure clad in ornate armor. The battle was fierce, with Jace and Delira pushing their limits. Using a combination of Draxian combat techniques and human ingenuity, they finally subdued the commander, capturing him. With the commander as their hostage, they made a hasty retreat back to their shuttle, evading reinforcements. As they sped away from the Krylok's flagship, explosions rocked the enemy vessel, a result of sabotage operations carried out by their team during the escape. Back at Draxos, their return was met with cheers. The news of their daring assault and the capture of the Krylok's commander spread quickly, boosting the morale of the Draxian defenders. In the war room, as they debriefed the council, Jace laid out their next steps. "With their leader in our custody, we can negotiate an end to this conflict. We have the upper hand now." Delira, standing beside him, nodded. "This victory is ours, but the war isn't over until we secure peace. Let's use this advantage wisely." The council, once skeptical of Jace's tactics and Delira's leadership, now listened intently, their attitudes transformed by the tide of victory. The battle for Draxos had been a crucible, forging a new era of unity and respect between the human and Draxian forces. As they planned their next move, Jace and Delira shared a quiet moment, reflecting on their journey from reluctant allies to leaders of a galvanized defense. The battle ahead was still daunting, but together they had turned the tide. The capture of the Krylok's commander marked a pivotal moment in the war. With their leader in custody, the Krylok's forces faltered, their morale shattered. Jace and Princess Delira leveraged this advantage, initiating peace negotiations while the enemy was still reeling from their loss. In the opulent halls of the Draxian royal palace, now transformed into a command center for war and diplomacy, Jace and Delira prepared for the arrival of the Krylok's emissaries. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a palpable sense of impending resolution. "Today, we set the terms for peace," Delira stated firmly as she reviewed the documents. Her demeanor was regal, her command unquestioned. Jace, who had spent the preceding days in strategic meetings, looked over the proposed treaty. "We need to ensure they understand this peace is not just a pause between conflicts. It's a new beginning for both our peoples." As the Krylok's emissaries entered, escorted by Draxian guards, the room fell silent. The negotiations were intense, with Jace and Delira presenting a united front. They demanded disarmament and a withdrawal of Krylok's forces, offering in return the release of their commander and aid to rebuild the regions devastated by the conflict. Hours of deliberation followed, with both sides making concessions. Finally, an agreement was reached. The treaty was signed, marking the end of hostilities and the start of a new diplomatic era. The news of the treaty spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Jace, once a mere human diplomat, was hailed as a hero, his innovative tactics and relentless pursuit of peace celebrated far and wide. Delira, too, rose in stature, her leadership during the crisis cementing her place as a formidable future queen. In the aftermath of the peace accord, the Galactic Council convened a special session to honor Jace and Delira. The Grand Chamber, once a site of mockery and skepticism towards Jace, now resonated with applause and acclaim. The presiding officer, the same Alithian who had witnessed Jace's initial ridicule, addressed the assembly. Today, we recognize the courage and wisdom of Princess Delira and Jace Morgan. Their actions have not only saved the Draxian system, but have also set a precedent for how we, as a galactic community, can resolve conflicts. Jace stood beside Delira, receiving the accolades with humility. "This peace is not my doing alone," he said, addressing the council. "It is the result of brave souls on every side, fighting not just with weapons, but with an unyielding commitment to the future." Delira added, "Let this be a reminder that even in the darkest times, dialogue and cooperation can lead us to light." Following the ceremony, celebrations erupted throughout Draxos and beyond. Jace and Delira, now seen as symbols of unity and resilience, were at the heart of these festivities, their earlier trials forgotten in the joy of victory. As the celebrations continued, Jace and Delira shared a quiet moment on a balcony overlooking the capital. "We've changed the course of history," Delira said, looking out over the city lit by fireworks. Jace nodded, his thoughts on the long journey they had endured. "We did, and something tells me this is just the beginning." Together, they watched the sky, its bursts of color reflecting the bright future they had forged, a future built on strength, courage, and an unlikely partnership that had altered the fabric of the galaxy. As the embers of celebration dimmed and the city of Draxos returned to its daily rhythms, Jace and Princess Delira found themselves at the helm of a changing world. The peace treaty had held firm, and both Draxian and Krylok societies began the slow process of rebuilding and reconciliation. In the serene morning light filtering through the high windows of the palace, Delira and Jace reviewed reports of the recovery efforts. The Kryloks, once fierce adversaries, were now partners in reconstruction, their collaboration brokered by the terms Jace and Delira had fought hard to establish. "We are witnessing a transformation," Delira remarked, her voice tinged with wonder and a hint of exhaustion. "Not just of our lands, but of old beliefs. It's a fragile process, but it's happening." Jace, scanning a datapad, nodded in agreement. "It's more than I hoped for when I first arrived here. You've shown your people and the galaxy what true leadership looks like." Delira looked at him, a soft smile playing on her lips. "And you've shown that even an outsider can become a protector, a friend, even a hero." Their attention turned as one of Delira's advisors entered, a young Draxian woman with scales that shimmered like dawn light. "Princess, the council is ready to convene. They're eager to hear your plans for further integration with the Kryloks." Delira stood, her stature regal and commanding. "Thank you, Delira. We'll be there shortly." She turned to Jace. "Shall we?" As they walked to the council chamber, Jace felt a sense of purpose that had grown only stronger since his unexpected arrival on Draxos. "You know, I never imagined staying here after the conflict ended. But now, it feels like there's still so much to do." Delira glanced at him, her expression earnest. "Your insights have been invaluable, Jace. I hope you consider making this your home, not just as a hero of war, but as a builder of peace." The council session was productive, filled with discussions about economic strategies, cultural exchanges, and security protocols. The former skeptics of the council now looked to Jace for his perspective, a testament to his proven wisdom and the trust he had earned. After the meeting, as they often did now, Jace and Delira took a walk to the palace gardens, a space of tranquility amidst the world's complexities. "I've been thinking about what you said," Jace began, his gaze on the path ahead. "About staying." "And," Delira prompted, watching him closely, I realized that home isn't just where you're born. It's where you make a difference, Jay said, his decision clear in his voice. So yes, I'll stay. Not because I owe it to anyone, but because here with you with all this, he gestured around, I can contribute to something lasting. Delira's relief was palpable, and her smile radiant. I'm glad, Jace. Draxos and I need you. Their path took them to a lookout over the city, where the early rays of sunlight painted the skyline with hues of gold and crimson. Standing side by side, they looked out over the landscape, a tangible symbol of the dawn of a new era. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Delira mused aloud. Jace nodded, his eyes reflecting the new day's light. Yes, a new dawn not just for Draxos, but for us all. Together, they turned from the vista, ready to face the day's challenges, secure in the knowledge that their partnership had not only weathered the storm of war, but would continue to shape the future. As they walked back to the palace, their shared purpose united them, a beacon for a galaxy watching and learning from their example.